This week on Government Matters.
We're just applying the same standards now to accountability for third-party apps as we would to .gov and .mil websites.
Social media exchanges between citizen and government can be fraught with peril. Is the U.S. Digital Registry a silver bullet?
Protecting and ensuring effective cybersecurity is not a one-and-done initiative or activity. It's perpetual.
Work in progress might be a generous description for Homeland Security's Einstein program. We profile the porous National Cybersecurity Protection System.
We do not want to go back to the spoils system that we had many, many years ago in this country. Due process is just an important thing. It's a fundamental American right.
The largest federal employee union says that right is under attack. Government Matters starts now.
From ABC 7 and News Channel 8, this is Government Matters.
To our viewers around the world on the American Forces Network and here in the nation's capital, thanks for joining us. Government is the engine that runs this city. That's why Government Matters. Every week we'll bring you the top headlines in tech, security, and management. I'm your host, Morris Jones. The Environmental Protection Agency says Michigan officials ignored their advice about corrosion-causing elements in Flint's water supply. State officials say the EPA dragged its feet, allowing the problem to fester for months. Congressman Jason Chaffetz blames both sides, calling the crisis a failure of epic proportions. Sarah Ganim has more.
Very seriously.
A bombshell on Capitol Hill. The Flint mother at the heart of the water crisis testifying that the state of Michigan tried to silence an EPA whistleblower. Leigh Ann Walters told the House Oversight Committee that an official with the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality bragged to her that a leaked memo from an EPA researcher was being, quote, handled, telling her
that his report was flawed and that there would be no final report.
That report was written by Miguel Del Toro, the EPA researcher who tested the water in Walter's home in early 2015. The resulting memo was leaked in June, showing the water in her home was more than twice the level of hazardous waste. The EPA sat on this memo for months, and now we're learning through Walter's testimony that the state tried to suppress it too.
This was the ultimate betrayal for the citizens.
CNN has reached out to the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality for comment.
Why would they be paying for water that they cannot even use that is poisoning them? That's not American.
Strong words for Flint's former emergency manager, Darnell Early, who declined to testify.
We're calling on the U.S. Marshals to hunt him down and give him that subpoena.
Early is not the only person the committee wants to hear from. Democrats have urged leadership to invite Michigan Governor Rick Snyder to testify too.
Can anybody tell me why the governor of Michigan is not here today? Because he's hiding. That's what's happening.
And those who did show up were chastised for being less than forthcoming. The chairman of the committee pushing to know why the EPA waited months to act on that Del Toro memo.
Why wasn't that made public?
I don't know the answer to that question. I think that
You can't come to a hearing before Congress and be in charge of water quality for the EPA and not know the answer to that question.
As the Oversight Committee continues to pursue answers to questions that have plagued Flint residents for almost 2 years, one glaring truth.
We cannot guarantee at this point in time the water is safe to drink.
Sarah Ganim reporting. House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi compared the Flint water crisis to Hurricane Katrina. She says Flint was a man-made disaster, but Katrina was a natural disaster compounded by disastrous response. The Federal Emergency Management Agency wants to be better prepared next time around. Diane Cho has that part of the story.
Deservedly or not, the Federal Emergency Management Agency's public image took a hit during Hurricane Katrina. They've been working hard to improve it ever since.
We learned a lot from Katrina, and one was we should use the best available standards, and that is HUD manufactured housing. It is the standard that is designed for people to live in. It has the durability, and it's the basis of which we provide our units.
FEMA plays a huge role helping people get back on their feet once the president declares a state of emergency or a major disaster.
Disasters happen anywhere, anytime.
In some cases, if there aren't enough homes available to rent, FEMA will bring in manufactured homes to disaster areas. They serve as temporary housing for survivors.
What I often tell people is your smoke alarm is going to go off in a minute and a half, typically, if you're doing proper smoke alarms. That gives you less than a minute to understand what that sound is, to get yourself together to wake up everybody else and get out in less than a minute. It's not enough time.
This unit is an example of the next generation of temporary housing.
We wanted to make sure they were the safest we could provide.
That includes new features like sprinkler systems. If survivors don't hear the smoke detector go off, these units have a plan B. FEMA installed strobe alarms to go with them.
And if a fire starts, there's a good chance it will put it out. But more importantly, it gives people in time a chance to escape.
According to research by the National Fire Protection Association, the death rate per fire in a sprinklered home is 82% lower compared to those without automatic extinguishing equipment and wet pipe sprinklers.
When you put people in an environment in a new home they're not familiar with after they've lost everything, it's just likely that there's an increased risk of accidents. Some of those may be accidental fires. This helps counteract that. It provides an additional layer of safety.
FEMA also designed the new temporary housing units to be more accessible. Now they will better serve survivors with disabilities.
Too oftentimes that it takes a long time to get those units in after a disaster. We wanted to have them in stock.
For FEMA, the new design has a simple goal in mind. In the wake of a disaster, it prevents survivors from having to endure yet another tragedy. For Government Matters, I'm Diane Cho.
Let's take a look now at names making news. During her confirmation hearing, Acting Director Beth Cobert promised to strengthen cybersecurity at the Office of Personnel Management. Cobert won praise from lawmakers in both parties, but her confirmation might take a while. First, Republicans want more records on the OPM data breach and more information about the health care law. Ashkan Soltani has announced his departure from the White House. In a tweet, Soltani said he was unable to obtain the necessary security clearance. He joined the Federal Trade Commission in 2014 after winning a share of the Pulitzer Prize for his work on the Edward Snowden story. Judith Zawadzki will take on a new role at the General Services Administration. Her job? Transform the multiple award schedules program to make the shopping experience better for vendors and federal buyers. In tech matters, the U.S. Digital Registry. We're trained to trust information on websites that end in .gov or .mil. But the federal government of 2016 interacts with citizens on a variety of third-party platforms like Facebook, Pinterest, or Storify. Those exchanges can be fraught with peril when malicious actors masquerade as legitimate agencies. The General Services Administration wants to make things legit. Last month, they launched a new tool. It's called the U.S. Digital Registry. Here to explain is Justin Herman, U.S. Federal socialgov lead at GSA. All right, Justin, tell us more about the Digital Registry. How does it work?
Well, you said it best, Morris, is that increasingly citizens go online in order to engage, conduct business, otherwise access public services. But with websites, you can see, because there's a .mil, there's a .gov behind it, so you know it's official. But increasingly, whether it's Facebook, it's Twitter, whether people are looking to ask a question of public health information or get the best information about their student loan information, these are things done on third-party sites that may or may not carry authentication. And we also see, let's just say, news sites, and when there's an emergency going on, is often the first thing to go out the door is valid official information. And so that's why we're doing this, so the U.S. Digital Registry is an open data platform repository that allows government agencies to go in and authenticate as official their third-party accounts, but it also generates open data in a way that news organizations, companies, really anyone is able to use it and customize the information. So like, let's say you wanted to get all information coming out of the U.S. federal government that's official around public health, but in the Spanish language. Now, before, you'd have to go and search and find out what platform it's on, or even what agency it's going on. But the U.S. Digital Registry helps agencies tear down the bureaucracy that separates citizens and the public services they need, but also the technological bureaucracy that happens.
Now, earlier, I mentioned malicious actors. You've explained some of this, but tell me what else, what are the kinds of activity that you hope to prevent?
Well, it's twofold here, really, is the ways this helps agencies themselves maintain a greater level of accountability over their programs. Just last year, I was on this program discussing, after there was recent cyber vandalism attacks through government social media accounts and third-party apps. This here, what we're discussing, is a direct result of needs established by that to not only allow the public to better see and better receive the information that they need, but it also allows the government to have greater accountability. Just to access the registry, you have to authenticate through max.gov. So right there, we know that even if you're even using this, you have to authenticate.
Justin, let's talk about the path forward. You have a very specific goal in mind for Leap Day, or February 29th. Tell me more.
Actually, what's kind of exciting about it is just what you said. This is the beginning. Right now, we're working with agencies because some agencies have 20 accounts. Some agencies, like State Department, could have 2,000 accounts. The DoD itself likely has up to 5,000 accounts. So this is the size that we're talking about. And also, these are in languages pretty much that you would find anywhere. So right now, what we're doing is that we're working with agencies to be able to answer their questions, take in feedback, and build this out in a way that could serve the DoD, State Department, just as well as it would the post office or an account that only has a Twitter account on a basic level. Now from there, so that's what by Leap Day, is that we're going to be enriching this data. Now after that is when we're going to be reaching out more to news organizations, companies, data analysis firms, researchers on how they're able to use this in order to provide better emergency management services, public health services, really any service that is currently being shared online right now and engaged with from the U.S. federal government. You will be able to use this data to customize and authenticate it for the first time.
Historically, official federal communications are pretty buttoned up. Agencies are careful about what they say and when they say it, but that's not always the case on social media. The Digital Registry will legitimize those accounts to make citizens safer. But what about for government? Is this a risky move?
I don't really see it as a risky move. In fact, it's something that we're just applying the same standards now to accountability for third-party apps as we would to .gov and .mil websites. And so that's pretty much something that in 2016 we can all agree upon is where we should be.
You're a great advocate for the cause. Justin Herman, U.S. Federal Social Gov Lead at the General Services Administration. Good luck, Justin.
Thank you, Morris.
In 1905, Albert Einstein's theory of relativity changed the face of physics. Today, a computer program that bears his name wants to change the face of federal cybersecurity. A progress report straight ahead on Government Matters. In Security Matters, the porous National Cybersecurity Protection System. The Department of Homeland Security has been charged with detecting and preventing malicious activity moving in and out of federal computer networks. But the system is a work in progress. Meanwhile, federal data remains vulnerable. For more, I'm joined by Gregory Wilshusen, Director of Information Security Issues at the Government Accountability Office. Greg, let's start with a quick explainer of the National Cybersecurity Protection System. It's commonly called Einstein. How does it work?
Well, that's right, Morris. Einstein is a system of systems, if you will, that is intended to detect and prevent computer intrusions into federal agencies. It works by having over about 228 sensors placed in front of agencies' networks or portals. They're trusted internet connections, if you will, between the agency's networks and the internet. And it then scans and monitors all information that's transiting into the agency's networks. And it works by using what's known as a signature-based technology to detect these intrusions. And what it does, it compares traffic that's coming through the sensor to known patterns of malicious data or signatures, if you will. And it's very effective in identifying and detecting those particular malicious traffic. but it's not so good in detecting malicious traffic for which may not be known.
All right, so there will be changes made. The latest iteration of Einstein was deployed in 2013. What's coming down the pike?
Well, you're right. Back in 2013, the Department of Homeland Security started to implement an intrusion prevention system, which not only detects malicious traffic, but then has a countermeasure which is intended to block it from actually entering the federal agency's network. What's on track now is to further expansion of that particular capability. It works in connection with internet service providers, and so DHS is working to expand that capability to provide greater coverage to all federal agencies.
In the meantime, NCPS has a lot of holes. Your office just released a report on this system. Here are a few limitations. It does not detect deviations from predefined baselines of normal network behavior. It does not address malicious content within web traffic. Only 5 of the 23 agencies were receiving intrusion prevention services. Now, Greg, that doesn't inspire a lot of confidence in the security of federal data. Does DHS have a plan in place to fix the system?
Well, yes, they do. But to be clear and fair, the system was not designed to actually detect anomalous network behavior. That's actually performed by other types of intrusion detection capabilities. But indeed, we found a number of opportunities and limitations with the existing system, and DHS has agreed with our recommendations to take steps to implement and take corrective actions to better enhance the capability of the system. And it intends to do so. Most of those activities are going to be completed by the end of this calendar year.
Now, the GAO designated information security as a government-wide high-risk area way back in 1997. Last year, you expanded it to include personally identifiable information. Are federal agencies getting the message, and does this push to secure digital information have momentum?
Well, yes, Morris, I believe it does have momentum. Just to give you a few examples, the Office of Management and Budget has established a Cyber and National Security Unit and to help address federal cybersecurity issues. In addition, the federal CIO has kind of renewed or expanded its focus on cybersecurity issues. For example, you may recall last June, the federal CIO issued a cybersecurity sprint initiative, which required agencies to take immediate actions to implement certain cybersecurity enhancement activities. Since then, too, the federal CIO has issued a cybersecurity strategy and implementation plan for the federal civilian agencies. And so, yes, there is momentum, but it's important to point out, too, that protecting and ensuring effective cybersecurity is not a one-and-done initiative or activity. It's perpetual. And so whether or not this momentum can be sustained or will be sustained remains to be seen. And we'll be watching.
You bet we will. Gregory Wilshusen with the GAO. Thanks for the update, Greg.
Thank you.
In management matters, due process for workers deemed non-critical sensitive. This week, D.C. Delegate Eleanor Holmes Norton and Representative Rob Whitman introduced a bill that would overturn Kaplan versus Conyers. Job protections for 200,000 Defense Department employees hang in the balance. Joining me with the latest is J. David Cox, National President of the American Federation of Government Employees. David, before we get to this new bill, give us some background. What does non-critical sensitive mean?
Non-critical sensitive is that's low-graded employees. In this particular case, one of them was an accounting technician. The other one worked in a commissary, which is basically just like a grocery store. So we are not talking about people that deal with high-level security clearances or big national security issues.
All right, so tell us more about Kaplan versus Conyers. How did it impact the federal workforce?
It impacts the federal workforce in the fact that it denies them the right to have due process for any type of personnel actions. Before this case, employees could go to the Merit System Protection Board, called MSPB, if there was some type of personnel action against them. In these particular cases, one of them dealt with one of the employees. It was an indefinite suspension. The other one, it was a demotion. The MSPB is the independent group that decides whether those cases were right or not. and now these employees have lost that right and can go nowhere with it.
Now, the Supreme Court declined to hear this case, so legislation is the only remedy. You support the Norton-Whitman bill. What would it accomplish?
Eleanor Norton Holmes and Rob Whitman, bipartisan support, something we're very, very proud of. It would restore those rights to those employees. It would give them the opportunity to be able to go to the MSPB over personnel issues that they were in the past able to go to, and would give them more rights. And what we have seen is a constant erosion of federal employees' due process rights. And without those, we will go back over 100 years in this country where we'll have a politicized workforce, and we'll have, the spoils system that we worked so hard to get away from, and not have the professional civil servants that we currently have.
David, following up on what you just talked about, it's an election year, and I'm wondering if that helps or hurts you. This is bipartisan legislation, but that's no guarantee of success. Do you expect this bill to pass without a fight?
There's going to always be a fight in the United States Congress over breathing air nowadays. I think we get a fight in Congress. Right. But we believe that it's good legislation, that we believe both of these are very, very strong members that will be able to pull both parties along and get this legislation moving.
Before you go, I'd like to step back from this specific bill for a look at the big picture. Generally speaking, do you feel the constitutional rights of federal workers are under attack?
We are constantly seeing those rights under attack, as we have seen in this case, as we have seen in many other cases. In the VA recently, an erosion of the executive service employees' rights, and now there's legislation trying to be introduced that would get rid of those same rights for rank and file employees. And again, due process is a fundamental right of this country. That's how we have a professional civil service that we have, and we do not want to go back to the spoils system that we had many, many years ago in this country. Due process is just an important thing. It's a fundamental American right.
We'll keep following this legislation. J. David Cox, National President of the American Federation of Government Employees. Thanks again.
Thanks so much for having me. Glad to be with you.
And that's the latest from Washington. Thanks for watching. I'm Morris Jones. We know your week is filled with other matters. Save this half hour for us.